All right, so overrated and underrated. Let's start with overrated. Teams that you think are way too high. On the poll right now, just in general, you don't think they're going to finish where people have them projected. Pat, you can start. Most overrated team to you in college football this year.
Yeah, I sort of already addressed it earlier. I think USC is super overrated. I think in terms of the old Oklahoma teams that relied so heavily on offense and had almost no defense, it worked to a certain extent for them, but they were falling apart. And at the end of Lincoln Riley's tenure there, it became less and less effective, it was seeming. So I just think as that transitions over to USC, I could see this team losing 3, 4 games pretty easily. And I think among like the cultural zeitgeist, people do not expect that at all.
Kyle.
And I think I agree, and I think I it's not necessarily going to be Lincoln Riley's fault. I think just the fact that it's a new team, he inherited a team that was terrible last year. Sure, they brought in a lot of talent, and he's a very good recruiter, but I think that it's going to take him a little bit to kind of iron out. Like I think next year they're going to be a wagon,
I
but
fully agree.
but this year I think that there were a lot of people that were saying like they're like there were and I think the poll has them in a fair spot, like 14 is fair. But a lot of the hype I was seeing in the offseason and then the build up to the season, people like they should be title favorites. It's like, guys, this team won 4 games last year. Like, and they added a coach who is notoriously terrible in the clutch. Like, they're gonna need a year to iron everything out a little bit.
He can build a great offense and he can recruit incredibly well, but he's been known to mismanage games down the stretch. And he hasn't been able to build the program yet, either by recruiting or instilling the offense that he really wants to in under a year.
They're still going to be good. Like I think that I can see them losing like 2.
Losing 3, 4 games does not mean you're a terrible team. I just don't think they're title contenders.
No, I see them losing probably like 2. Like I can imagine them losing to Notre Dame and Utah, which aren't shameful losses, and probably dumping on the bad teams, and then maybe slipping up against like a random team in there just because like it is Lincoln Riley. Like Kansas State, I'm pretty sure had a winning record against Lincoln Riley. So, it's going to happen. Yeah. I do have another overrated team though that I think.
Yep.
I think Michigan is slightly overrated. They're a top 10 team. I think they're riding on the coattails of last season because they were in the playoff last year. Like I don't think a lot of people have them as being a big time contender, but I just think that like I've never been a big believer in Harbaugh, not a big supporter of the khakis. But I think this whole thing they're doing where like, yeah, week 1 we're gonna go with one quarterback, and then week 2 we're gonna go with the other, and then we're gonna evaluate it from there. It just seems like it just does not seem like a recipe for success at all. Like it just does not seem like khakis really has anything under control up there. And I think after last year, that kind of humiliating defeat kind of just was just like, yeah, you guys got there because Ohio State lost early on in the year to Oregon, and
Ohio State had just a terminally flawed defense.
Yeah, and I think that sure they were. Michigan is always just that team for me that's like, yeah, they're good, but they're not great. And I think that them being in the top 10, I can't imagine that they're going to end the season there.
I actually think that they're going to be. This is probably the best offense that he's ever had in terms of just pieces.
I was gonna say like. I don't know, Kyle. Like Jeremy said, I think that's one of the better offenses they had. Yes, the 2 quarterback thing's a little strange, but like, I mean, if your options are Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy, like, I mean, that's a good problem to have. And like, I don't know. I get they lost a lot of game wreckers on defense, but like overall, that defense is still going to be pretty good.
That's going to be their
pretty
weakness.
Good still, though.
Yeah, if they end up getting knocked out.
I know, but like the perception is like, okay, their defense is going to decline. Like, but that for Michigan, like that's maybe a little bit of a decline. But I mean, that's still a fairly high quality Big Ten defense. And I mean,
they're losing to Rutgers.
I don't know. I think there's odds that they could still be 10-1 or 11-0 going into Ohio State at the end of the year.
Team of the year, Rutgers, Michigan.
What do you got, Davis, for your overrated team?
I'll keep it in the Big Ten. I got Michigan State. So they had a great season last year. Kenneth Walker went off. That was a great portal addition, but he's gone. Over half of their offensive line is gone. Yeah, their secondary was pretty bad last year as it is, and I don't really see a lot of upgrade coming. They lost a couple guys up front on the pass rush that already was a little suspect. I don't know. I feel like people are kind of kind of like you guys were talking earlier with Pitt, like people are kind of taking what happened last year as the standard for how they're ranked in the preseason.
Desmond
And
Howard.
yeah, like I'm not going to say they're going to be below 500 or anything, but like I think the perception of them as a Big Ten contender to me is a little far fetched. I think 8-4, things get really bad 7-5, but I don't think they're contending for the Big Ten by any stretch.
Say it with me, everybody. The most overrated team in the nation this year, especially right now, is Notre Dame. I don't know why in the world they're ranked number 5. Now, an argument could be made that if you look at like teams 6 through 15, I would also argue every single one of those teams is too high. But I'm going to pick on Notre Dame because old habits die hard, and I hate Notre Dame so much. Marcus Freeman has a tremendous amount of pressure put on him in his first season, and I think he's only like 35, 36. And I'm pretty sure this is a program that historically chews up and spits out rookie head coaches. And this is his first job ever as a head coach, let alone him coming in from somewhere else. This is his first job as a head coach anywhere. So, I mean, it remains to be seen. Maybe they'll figure it out. I have truly no idea who their starting quarterback is right now because I know last year was Jack Cohn, which is also hilarious. I don't know who their guy is now. They're still an offensive line factory. Their defense is going to be all right, but again, the whole non-schedule thing does hurt them, and they have a big matchup coming up in week 1 next week that I'm not going to talk about because I think it may get brought up for the game of the year. So we're just going to move on real quick to underrated. And because I went last, I'll go first here. I think Oklahoma's a little bit underrated, but I think that one of you guys may talk about them. So I'm going to go with my other one, which is Clemson. I know Pat said that he didn't think Clemson was going to be that good. I mean, people just wrote off Dabo. And as much as just a snake oil salesman as that, man, I'm going to teach your son how to play football and be a great human being. And then just coaches Deshaun Watson. So, we're just going to skip right over that, huh, Dabo?
I'm not a big Dabo guy. There's some other stuff.
I am not, exactly. I'm not the biggest Dabo guy as well, but the man can coach, on the field at least. So I'm going to see, I think that people are just writing them off. They're what, the 6th seed right now? Notre Dame's 5, Clemson 6, I believe, Utah 7. And that seems a little bit low. Are they 4? It might be 4.
Yeah, Clemson's number 4.
I'm pretty sure Clemson's 4, yeah.
Good. That's exactly where they should be. I have them finishing as the 3 seed. I have them being in the playoff ahead of Georgia this year, and I will die on that hill. I think that they will be good. They'll have a better start to the season than last year because they wanted to face last year was number 3 against number 5, Georgia and Clemson, first week of the season, which was an insane matchup. It was great. All the hype.
What was the final of that game?
7-3. 10-3, yeah. And the only touchdown was a pick 6. So
defense wins championships, baby.
Yeah, I mean, they had the greatest defense in the last, 30 years. That's the only reason that they won the title.
And they were facing the best defensive coordinator in football.
Who is now the head coach of?
Oklahoma.
Exactly. So, Kyle, who's your underrated team?
So I have 2. Oklahoma is not one of them. I can speak on Oklahoma if you want me to.
No.
But
do your pick.
I was just going to say, I think they're fairly rated. I think that their offense isn't fantastic right now. I think they're going to have a pretty good defense. I think it's good. It's going to be like with USC, except I think they're not as talented. There's growing pains they're going to have to go through. I think they could go I think they could lose 3 games this year. I don't want to go down the stretch and pick them, mostly because I don't want to say which teams they'll lose to. But I can imagine them slipping up against a bad team and then maybe losing Bedlam again and against Baylor or something like that. But they also could be really good. Who knows? I'm not really sure what to think of them offensively. I think defensively they're going to be pretty good. But my underrated teams, I guess they might not be the hottest takes, but I think Oregon's pretty underrated. I think that people might sleep on them because they were one of the teams that was caught in the shuffle of last year, which is why I really think this year is going to be a big chaos year because there's so much turnover that there are going to be so many different players and coaches that are going to be trying to get used to their new programs. And I think that it's just going to be a funky year. And I mean, I mentioned before we were recording that we could totally see a 2-loss team make it in there. Maybe a 2-loss Michigan, that their only losses being to Ohio State and then someone else, I don't know, could sneak in. Just a random team that has 2 losses could sneak in this year just because I think that the gap between Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and the rest of the teams in college football is so large this year with all the turnover that we've seen that we could see something like that happen. And, if Oregon play a close game against Georgia, and then they beat Utah in the title game. Like that's going to be a pretty good resume right there. You really never know what's going to happen if they win out after losing to Georgia. Like that's a pretty damn good resume depending on what Georgia ends up doing through the rest of the season. And the other one I have is kind of a homer pick for me. I mean, I don't think they're going to do anything crazy, but I think South Carolina is going to be good. I like Spencer Rattler going to new pastures. Hopefully their offensive line will be able to block for him because I'm still a believer in Rattler. I think still think he's a good player. I think he just was dealt a really tough hand, and they made the smart decision in moving on from him last year. I mean, it was a hard decision. I think, a kid with his talent, you might want to see him get another shot, but it was just not going to work. And I think that, new fresh offense, he's going to have his boy, he's going to have Stogner with him. Maybe they'll be able to get something cooking for him and win a couple good games. Maybe they'll beat Georgia. Who knows?
I think they face Clemson as well, so they could be real bracket wreckers if they really wanted to be. Pat.
Yeah, my underrated team this year, I'm going to the Big Ten. I like the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They had the number 6 defense.
Davis is very happy about that.
One of my two.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Nice.
They had the number 6 defense in the country last year. They're bringing back most of their guys. They've got a 5th-year quarterback in Tanner Morgan, who's not great, but it's his 5th year, so he knows what he's doing.
It's not college basketball, Pat.
Exactly. and notably, they do not play Michigan or Ohio State during the regular season, and thus they could smoke their way through the Big Ten if they beat Davis's overrated team in Michigan State and his team in Penn State.
Interesting pick. Some people do have Minnesota making it out of the Big Ten West to make it to Indy.
The Big Ten West is also just so wide open this year.
Especially after Nebraska lost. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah,
They were the front runners.
The legend Scott Frost, man. But, I mean, Iowa's probably, as good as they were last year, which wasn't crazy, but pretty good. Wisconsin's not back. Yeah, and I like
they
all
still have
Pat's
Graham
seasons.
Mertz. Is he still there?
We'll be rowing the boat. I believe, Graham Mertz, I believe, is still the starting quarterback.
Yikes. I mean, I know I think they picked up a good transfer running back, which is all they need in Wisconsin. Just mow people down running the triple option.
All you need to do is be able to hand off the ball up in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Wisconsin is the only Big Ten West team that's ranked, I will say. So that's a fun take. I like that.
All right. And Davis, your underrated team.
All right. This one's going to seem out of left field, but I'm pretty passionate about this team.
Okay.
BYU is a top 15 team in the country. They had.
We don't like to see that, but also we like the outside the box pick.
After 2020, everyone thought okay, they had all cupcakes, they're overrated. Zach Wilson's off the NFL, they're gonna crash and burn next year. They did not crash and burn the next season. They went 5-0 against the Pac-12. They finally beat Utah, which was big. Zach Wilson's replacement, Jaron Hall, actually played very well. They returned 8 starters on offense, the entire offensive line. They are number 1 in returning production on defense in the country. I think, they're not a playoff team. No one's going to be talking about that, but they got Baylor, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas to start the year, too.
I think they could knock off 2 or 3 of those teams.
You said Baylor and Notre Dame are the other two? You have to assume, at least right now, isn't Baylor ranked 11th or 12th? Something like that?
They're
I
10.
believe they're 10.
You go through the year, these teams will all be ranked at the top 25 at the time that they will play them, because I don't think Baylor and Notre Dame are going to fall out unless Baylor has a truly horrid year, which could happen, but I don't see it happening right now. You're right. BYU could finish in the... You said top 15? I'll do you one further. If things fall right for them, you could argue a top 8 finish.
I was gonna say, Davis, I didn't know their schedule was like that. Theoretically, if they were to go undefeated, would they not be in the playoff?
Right?
They'd have a
that's a
massive case
stacked.
for it.
That's a stacked schedule.
I
don't think any other team has a schedule like that.
And granted, I don't think they will go undefeated, but I think there's a very good chance they could be keeping 1 or 2 other teams out of the playoff.
I like
that. Kind of fun.
Where they're at.
I do love chaos. Will they have some Mormon magic? Who knows?